Nikki's on schedule here. We got to keep everything on schedule. I'm Henrietta Kemp, and I'm the program coordinator for this league, and we're happy to have Miss Melinda Humphries with us tonight. She's our new Christian County Court Clerk, and she was born and raised in Hopkinsville, went to Christian County High Community College, and then she went to Eastern Kentucky University, where she got a degree in Office Systems Technology. And she's been as of 2002, she was the election coordinator for Christian County. I think years ago we worked with her when we were doing Kids Vote.
We did.
She helped us get the locations for that, and she has many short and long-term goals for the clerk's office, but most importantly, she says she's eager to be available to the clerk's employees, customers, and the community. So welcome, Melinda.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So I really don't have, I'm hoping you all might have some questions for me. For the most part, I had to step down from this past election due to the fact that I was a candidate on the ballot. But even at that point, I think it was actually a good thing. Regardless of the outcome for myself, it was a good thing. We learned a lot. Every election, you learn a lot. Doesn't matter who's on the ballot, doesn't matter what race it is, you learn something. And you take that and you apply it to the next one. So we have some things that we learned from this last one that we will be making some changes. I can tell you that our first Board of Elections meeting will be January 19th. Is that a Thursday? Yes, it is. At 10 a.m. in the physical courtroom. We will be, of course, that'll be our first Board of Elections meeting with myself. It's always made up of one Democrat representative, a Republican representative, and then the sheriff. So that will be our first meeting together. So we have some things that we need to go over. And one of those is going to be the voting centers. As we looked at the turnout to some of the voting centers, there was some that were, especially if they were really close to another one, we didn't see much of a turnout in those. So there's a possibility that we might decrease one of those voting centers, excuse me. But again, that'll be up to the board as a whole, not just myself. So there's going to be a little bit of that to look into. For the most part, we do have a program. I'm actually going to leave tomorrow through Thursday to go to the new clerks training. But they'll have some of the old clerks there as well. There's a thing it's called No Ink. That's the company. It is a way for us to be able to check someone in. Just like on it, we won't have the tablets we had with 10X. Their contract ended and it was not renewed by Frankfurt. So we have a new set to choose from. And the No Ink is what I have really looked at, studied, and I really like it. It has a lot of capabilities. Some of the clerks, smaller counties, they did this called ballot on demand. I'm not sure if that's exact wording. Basically what it is, you come in, you check in. A barcode is printed off for you. You take that barcode, and it's just like a handheld scanner like you would see at Walmart or anything like that. It tells from there the printer to print your ballot. So then that way we don't have stacks of all these unused ballots, because there's absolutely, I don't care how many magic wands you think you have, there's no way for us to be able to tell how many people are going to show up and where they're going to show up. So we had to purchase enough ballots for just about everywhere. If anybody, the worst case scenario is you run out. And that was not going to happen. So I told those girls, I said, you go more. I said, because what are you going to do if you have less? So in my advising process, this is the things that I would tell them. That's the worst thing you can do is run out of ballots. So with this program that we're hoping to get, now whether it goes into effect, because the actual tablets will be what the state will provide for us, but the extras, like the printers and things like that, the county would have to purchase. So it all depends on our budget and what we allow for elections. So what I would like to do is probably start that in the county precincts and hopefully integrate it slowly into the city precincts, to where the accountability would be strictly on our office and not the election officer that hands them the wrong ballot or they think it's the wrong ballot. That information is provided when they check in, the polling location, their precinct number, their ward is from us. So we would take on full responsibility if a voter says, wait a second, this is not my ballot. Well, that information came from our office. So it would be on us to make sure that that correction was made, or to clarify with the voter, yeah, this is your ballot. So those are the things that we are looking into for the most part. That's about all the new stuff that I have. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Okay, you said no ink, and then the other, what was the other one called? Or, so which one are we needing?
Well, we won't know, and we've got to go through the bid process and all that stuff. Our vendor that has our machines now is local in the state, it's HARP. And they are also going to be working with No Ink, HARP will be.
But the no ink would be have like the scanner or something?
Yeah, it'll be, initially it's going to be just like the tablet you checked in on. It's going to be just a little bit different, but the concept is still the same. But then it has the capability to do more, so that we could access that, excuse me, have a little barcode printed off, go on to the next step, and then have the printer actually print your ballot, so that we're not overdoing it on ballots. The election officer's not picking through 90 or 50 or whatever it is that they have on them at that time, depending, that you never know what that's going to mean, because you don't know how many people are going to file for office, what races you're going to have, how many are going to have opposition, how many aren't. So it has the capability to do quite a bit. Go ahead.
I'm fairly new to
You're
this, so
fine.
my question's fine. So
No,
did you
you're
say
fine.
you had to order all of those ballots before?
Prior to that, yes, ma'am.
So, okay, so how much does that cost, say, opposed to printers?
I do not have any figures in front of me today. The majority of our expenses, of course, is the setup, you know, when your vendor comes in, the setup of the voting equipment to make sure it's ready and prepared for that date, and then the paper ballots. Those are the bulk of our expenses. In the long run, it would definitely weigh out the cost of the actual paper ballot, because that's every election. You're every election on that. Now, anytime, like this election coming up, of course, is governors, and unfortunately for us, for everybody, it's the lowest turnout that we have. And I hate that, because it's just as important as local or presidential. But unfortunately, it is our lowest turnout. So we wouldn't even, what you do is you go back 4 years, and even 4 years after that, to kind of guesstimate the number of ballots you would need. But, you know, the 2020 election and the 2022 election were really good turnouts though. So I'm hoping that that is a trend that we're going to see, and it doesn't go down. It'll go down some for this election, unfortunately, but for the most part, I hope it's a positive thing, that people are starting to want to vote more, that they're interested. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a really great question, and that's something that they'll definitely have to look into before we decide. Wants and needs are two different things.
So do you have like an estimated budget for the election?
It's usually different per type of election, yes ma'am, because we know our expenses are not as great during the governors, and we know our expenses are way more in presidential than they are in a local election. That's one of the reasons why we might want to look into decreasing our voting centers, because it's about, you know, there's anywhere from, I'd say 6 to 8 election officers in each of those locations that we wouldn't need. The paper ballots we wouldn't need. And so that might be something we have to look into in order to be able to pay for convenience for the voter, which I do believe in the long run, this would be the way we'd want to go. A lot of counties are already doing the print on demand, where you just don't, I mean, you got enough paper without it having the actual print on it.
Just a question.
Yeah.
I know we all heard about if you have any information about that audit that the state wants
Yes.
to do, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes.
Maybe if you know any new information, what it entails?
So after each election, just to give you a little bit of background, after each election, you prepare all your documents and they have to go to grand jury. And that's just you turn over everything that is required. We call them SBE, State Board of Election, and then the form number. We turn over everything that's required to the State Board of Election along with whatever's required by grand jury. We give a brief, you read all the sheriff's reports. How many have worked elections before? Several. So you give, every election officer that is a sheriff is supposed to give out, you know, what happened that day at that location. We take all that, compile it into one. So then that goes to grand jury. So as for the audit, it's just a magnified grand jury, basically. They do ask for a little bit more. They ask for, basically they ask your, you know, what your experience was. Not just mine, I wasn't there, so I can't give mine. But the deputies, they're gonna wanna talk to the deputies, the former county clerk, like actually have conversations with them. They will probably contact voters that voted. They requested information on those that voted in-house, in person at the courthouse. That means the ones that had a reason. It wasn't the early voters, it was the ones that had a reason. They'll randomly select names from those applications to contact, to get their experience and ask them questions on how our county election was conducted. Of course, all the forms, and then there's just a few other extra forms that we didn't normally have. They want to know about our, like, what kind of calls we were getting that day. What was the major complaint? Unfortunately, I hate to use that word, but no one ever calls and says, "Good job." They did in 2020, which was, I mean, we were getting emails and everything. Like, "This is kind of," I was like, "Oh, wow." But most of the time, it's, "You didn't do that," you know. So we have to do a call log, and we normally don't keep a call log because it's like this.
Yeah.
And you're just jotting stuff down, looking stuff up, trying to figure out what precinct they're supposed to be in versus the one that we have on file for. So basically, it's just hang up, pick up, hang up, pick up. So there's really no time to write anything down. So they're gonna, we have to sit, well, I had to help them sit down and brainstorm and ask, okay, what was your major cause? Do you remember anything that was odd? Out of them, yeah, what kind of things did we have that we feel like we should explain to them, let them know about? But it is it's just, like I said, it's on a magnified grand jury. And they are just about complete. We lack 2 more forms, and then we'll have to send, well, they're actually gonna come pick it up. They don't want anything emailed, faxed, they want, you know, hard copies of those originals.
Will we continue the,
Go ahead.
will we continue the early voting days?
We hope so. I hope so. I think early voting is why we've had an increase in our turnout. Our turnout, unfortunately, will always be low, and a lot of people don't understand why, which we love our military here, we do, but voter records don't get purged like they used to when I first started. So if you look at the number of registered voters versus the population, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that's possible. And that's because the state doesn't purge the voter records like they should. And we constantly increase our numbers because they're not purged. But Fort Campbell is a 2-year thing most of the time. And so they're here, they want to register for a presidential because it's too late to get an absentee ballot. So our numbers are not great. So with the early voting though, I feel like that will help even though we're not where we should be on turnout, I feel like it will continue to help us increase that turnout, and you'll see a huge difference once they do start purging like they're going to, supposedly. You'll see a huge difference in our turnout. Unfortunately, due to our turnout, a lot of people in Frankfurt, especially like this next race that we're gonna have, which is all state offices, they won't come here. Because they look at the counties that turn out. And they're going, okay, well, I'm not gonna go down here when I know I turn out. it's not real numbers. If you were to take out just the 42223 zip code, if you just took that one zip code out, it would be a much bigger number in turnout percentages. So, and I've had a chance as a candidate to talk to some of the candidates that are going to be running for some of these offices and explain to them, and they had no idea. They were like, well, we're just going to have to come to Christian County. I was like, you are, you need to. We want you to come here. The people here need to meet you just like the people do in central and eastern Kentucky. You know, but you look at it and they've got to make their little trail and all the weird places to stop, and they're going to go, okay, they don't go here. But we do. So I'm hoping that I would much rather have more than 3 days personally, but right now that's state that's set at the state level. So we would still have this in-house, in person. You got to have a reason. I believe those are 6 days, and to me it should just be fairly even amount. But that's just my opinion.
You
Yes,
mentioned
ma'am.
something about the audit. Do they randomly pick people for the audit? So you
Yes.
mentioned a grand jury. Tell me how that plays a part in.
Okay, the
this
grand
audit.
jury report is after every election. So that
Grand jury, is that a local grand
Yeah,
jury?
yes.
Okay.
So we turn over all the required forms, your voter assisted forms, oath of voter forms, supplemental roster, your grand totals for, every race by precinct, cumulative. I'm trying to think right off the top of my head on what papers they get. They get the county clerk's shares report. So that would be the one, plus all the copies of the actual precinct or polling location, voting centers, whatever you want to call them, they get their report as well. So all that's compiled, made copies of, and turned over to grand jury. I have personally never been to grand jury. The county clerk is the one that goes. So for the May primary, that will be my first one to actually see. I've always asked our former clerk, like, how'd it go? He was like, that's fine. I'm like, okay. They didn't, but all of our forms were always in order as well, because that's what myself in the office prepared for him to take to grand jury. Now, the state audit is a random selection. The only time you don't get drawn is if you were drawn from a previous election. I talked to Graves County, and they were drawn in May, and they didn't get their overall, write-up, I guess, explanation until October. So I don't foresee that we will get ours automatically either. It'll take some time. But we do turn over the applications for those that voted in-house. And I would imagine they're probably going to select from phone numbers. And I would say, some people list their phone numbers, some people don't. So I'd say that those that did, those are the ones that they'll call. Is that the answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then I was going to ask you too about, I know what's his name, the Secretary of State, Adams?
Mike.
Whatever his name is. He's talked a lot about more polling places, not less. So when you all meet at this election board meeting, you all need to really think about what he's saying, because I think you need more, not less.
He, in my understanding, it's not disagreeing with that part. It's out in the rural areas. The miles between each one, when you have them within 1 mile or a mile, that's pretty close. When you could have had, I was hoping like Hillcrest Baptist Church, that area there, I didn't feel like had enough representation for, it would have been a good polling center. Instead of putting Friendship House right next to Indian Hills, or Cedar right next to Walnut Street, because they're within a mile of one another, but then you had this whole area over here that didn't have didn't have a voting center. So increasing them, I don't disagree with, it's how close they are to one another. When you could spread that out more and utilize those election officers and those machines in a way that you're trying to cover, within that 3 mile radius, and then it's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 miles out in the county. Now the county ones, for the most part, we use the existing precincts that we had in the previous pass before we went to voting centers. I think we added one other, that New Barron Springs, which is actually very close to Concord Baptist Church, technically, if you looked at the map. But out in the county, it's a possibility, or even on the outskirts of the county into the city, might be something. It was just having those so close together when we could have used them at Southside Church of Christ. Or I would have rather done it Hillcrest, because it's right there at Pembroke Road. And the only closest one they had was Pembroke Baptist Church in Pembroke. So to me, the whole map needs to be displayed, and we need to come together and look at it as a whole and see where's our spots at, where do we need more coverage. But it will go with how people turned out to. Which location closest one did they utilize the most? Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any particular precincts that had large turnout and people had to wait for?
Well, again, that goes back to the type of an election. I mean, you probably won't see that so much during this one, unfortunately. Indian Hills, we could have used another machine in Indian Hills, I feel like. Of course, I wasn't there that day, but as a candidate, I was just bored and I rode around. I was done door knocking, so I just started riding around. We had enough coverage at Bruce, but it stayed busy the whole time.
Line was long.
Yeah.
I worked it and I was like, when is the line gonna go down?
It never did.
Yes.
It never
I went
did.
to Indian Hills, and then I saw that line, so I went over to Hop Middle, and there wasn't anybody. So
See, and
it's
that's
like,
the thing. And when you go back to prior to voting centers, prior to COVID, Hopkinsville Middle School was one of the voting. That's why we chose it. We figured that area would be familiar with it. If we're gonna put one extra anywhere, it'd be there. And there was no one there.
Yeah.
So Indian Hills, I think a lot of that has to do with location. I think the further back you went into subdivisions, the less the turnout, because they're not gonna go that far. They're gonna hit the main strips. That's why I thought Hillcrest right there on the corner. It's not about, it's the overall aspect of it. What's the convenient? Think about the parking. Think about what, they're gonna see it. Right off of those main roads that they use, they're gonna see it. And they're gonna stop there instead of going all the way into a subdivision to find it.
I wonder, this question may not be relevant, but I know that there are some schools that are used as polling places, which means the whole school system has to close down for a day. Is it possible to not use schools so that doesn't happen?
Even pre-COVID, I was not a fan. Of course, they're accessible because they're state funded buildings. There was an incident, not here, it was Eastern, I want to say it was Eastern Kentucky, where when school was in session, prior to them closing it, that a voter randomly was in a bathroom, an adult that should not at
I'm
that
just saying
time.
that
So,
let it not be a polling place at
right,
all.
and then let them open the schools.
And then schools wouldn't.
That would be what I would
Okay.
prefer. When you go to voting centers, you got a lot of our churches have been very gracious as to let us use their locations. We still have government buildings that we can use. We were actually going to use this one, but obviously Tyler was on the ballot because this would be, right here would be, we used it for early voting, COVID year, and it worked out really well in here. So we have some other buildings like that we would be able to utilize. But then it goes back to location, because Senior Citizens is a great location. It's right there, in the main, they've got parking, it's accessible, because you have to consider all the accessibility requirements in order to make sure that it works. It has to be KDC inspected. So there's a lot of different aspects, and you might have this great building and then go, no, it's not gonna work. So, but no, I've always, ever since that one little thing happened, I was like, oh, and in the schools at all anymore. To me, it's just.
Not during school, but just not have any schools as polling places.
Right, and some counties don't, and some counties use them all.
Yeah.
And that's all they have. Depending on your size of your county makes a huge difference. Some are so small they don't need but one or two places, and they're good. I mean, Katie's is fairly small. They have a lot less than we do. I don't even know, because I only got the one school. They might use their one school, I'm not sure. But anyway, during COVID, we didn't use any, and then we started to come back a little bit more, because they were closed. They've been closed for a while. I can't remember how long they've been closed for a while on those days. They usually just close on that one presidential.
Right, every 4 years.
Yes, that would help them probably get out a couple days of school earlier. I
I
would
mean,
imagine.
it's more consistent. I mean, you have a Tuesday off in the middle of a school week,
And then the year we don't have an election, they do have school. Unless they take a teacher day still, sometimes they use that. But other than that, yeah, I would much rather use government buildings and some churches because all of them are usually have good parking, handicap accessible. They're accessible in the churches themselves too.
Are you responsible for releasing the numbers of the precincts? Remember back in the day, or the polling places?
Yeah.
I've yet to see it in the paper, and I know our paper's just real crappy right now. And so we're not getting good media coverage, but who does that? Does that come from your office?
We have, depending on the type of election, I believe the results are 80 plus pages long. So we don't have the capability to put it online being that large of a file. The cumulative is what's on our website from the last time. Now, if you want a precinct breakdown, anyone that's ever called, I've just emailed it to them. I mean, people have called, I've just sent an email. Because we have it in a format now. This was the first year that our vendor was able to format it to our liking and what we wanted it to look like, because we had voting centers. So yeah, I have a PDF. I'd be happy to email whatever you.
I just haven't seen any numbers,
They're on our website.
On your website.
Yes, ma'am. They are, and they're accumulative.
But nothing in the general public would know unless they went to your website, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know that. I mean, all of the paper and the radio listed was the actual final numbers for
Right, I
each
just like to see
race.
the breakdown myself.
Yeah.
What's your website?
It's ChristianCountyKY.gov.
There is KY.gov you go to, and they have a thing that's past turnout, and you can go by year, you can
Yeah.
look at it by precinct or by county.
You can.
Oh, really?
Yes.
KY.gov? Okay.
It's not as detailed as what I could email if you wanted a precinct breakdown.
Yes, I would.
Yes, ma'am. You just shoot me an email and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Melinda, have they set a date of when the governor's race gonna,
They have. It's on the state's website.
on the state?
I don't have that. It's usually if I had a calendar, I'd be able to tell you. It's in the teens. May, it's that Tuesday. I want to say it's
Like the 16th, maybe.
I want to say
It's a Tuesday.
16.
Yeah, the Tuesday is 16th.
Yes, that will be our primary.
What is this, 23?
Yes.
So 24?
No, this
No,
one.
no, for
No, for the
23.
next selection coming up.
The primary is
Primary.
May
Yeah.
16th, yeah.
The
for week
governor's
before
race,
this.
all state offices, and any unexpired terms that we might have coming up, which I know of a school board race, is an unexpired term that would be coming up, and then there might be another one, I'm not sure yet.
The reason I'm asking, are you gonna use the senior center? Because you know we approved the input for them to start working on their road.
Well, we'll have to come up with a different plan if it's during that time.
That's what I'm asking.
Because the tornado hit one year,
It did,
remember?
yes.
And we had to make some adjustments, yeah, so we'll just have to make some adjustments to that as well. That would be, we would be able to come back here though, if that's the case.
True. This was
And
a
use the
good
sheriff's
location.
department, yeah, we would be able to come back here. That would be closest to the senior citizen
That's
center.
close, right,
Yeah.
okay.
And we would still use the Bruce again. It seems like everyone, since that 1 year of COVID, when that was the only location that we had, that one primary, it seems like that stuck. And so a lot of people just like, I'm like, you live so close to this place, they're like, I don't care, I've been going to the Bruce this whole time. I'm like, okay, you do you, it's fine. You can vote there if you want to. So, but yes, and then the general, I think, is the 6th. I glanced at it.
Okay,
I'm not real sure. It's on the website. It's on the,
the state website?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, when you was talking, I'm like, wait, I gotta stop and think about
It's
this.
the 7th.
it's 7th, it's November 7th. Mhm.
Okay. And I'm not sure of when the date they're gonna start.
Okay.
If y'all not aware, ladies, this project has been talked about for years.
Years.
A lot of years. All of this is from the, what is it, Wendy's?
I didn't know if it was from
Oh, you
Stoplight.
mean for the widening of the road?
Yeah, the stoplight.
Yes, they're going to widen that road and put
Byway.
walking,
So,
sidewalks and things, yes.
Does anybody else have any questions for Melinda?
Well, has your staff talked about any lessons learned that, like, just some
like I said in the beginning, every election there's a lesson learned. Yeah, it was a lot, and even though I tried what I could to talk them through, until you experience something for yourself, until you experience, because if there was a problem, I just did it. I didn't say, hey, let me show you how to do this, or hey, let me, because there never was time. It was get it done, get it out, move on to the next one. So they themselves had to experience what I normally did that day, and they were just like, don't leave it. And it wasn't like that. They were capable. I said, you got through it. I knew you would, but sometimes you got to turn over a little bit so that everyone else gets to have an understanding of what it takes to put an election on. So I always encourage even candidates to think about running. Before you do that, be an election officer. It gives you a great deal of perspective on how an election is ran. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'll be an election officer. Well, how bad could it be? It's not bad.
It's not bad.
It's just, there's a lot. It is a lot, a whole lot. Yes. You better bring some
question.
bread.
Do y'all plan on putting a little bit more emphasis on training?
Okay.
Training of
That's a great question. Thank you. Prior to the last election, I always did the training. Myself, along with our vendor. I wasn't permitted to do the training. I'm not taking that and saying that's what happened. I just, how you go to a classroom and you've been teaching that class for years, and then the substitute comes in for a day. Well, there you go. It's not that substitute didn't have, they knew they're good substitute, good teachers. It's just the people, the format, the people there were accustomed to what that teacher did. And when you take it out of the equation, even the same, they could be saying the same thing, it's just different. And so that's what I feel like there might have been a little disconnect there. And not just that, we had so many new people that didn't, I couldn't get my hands on, so to speak, or be a part of that. And, yes, there'll be a little bit different on the training. It'll still be the same individuals that we have in our office, except I'll just be more involved in that training process as I have been in the previous years. Yes.
What could we do as legal women's voters to help?
I just want to say thank you anyway, because I think you all helped out this year so much on getting the word out to the locations. Just the dates, the candidate information, the forums. Continue to do that, because I've seen that just grow and grow and grow over the years just as an election officer, because I've done my part in just staying right down the middle, nonpartisan. I don't, but you all have done the same thing in bringing this together to where people, you can't make people listen. You can't make people read. You can't but if it's there and the information is there, you can't say you didn't try. It's up to them at some point. As a voter, their responsibility is now to take an honest effort to listen, to read, to search. But you've all provided that for the county. And in my opinion, it has been huge for us. And I hope that relationship continues to grow, and we can do, not just we, but you all can do more each year to help get the word out. Because, all you can do is what you can do. At that point, it's up to them to make the effort to go vote or to ask questions. But I was extremely impressed with the forums. For myself, I'm not gonna lie, the first one I was petrified. I don't have a public speaking. I love talking, I love explaining, I love encouraging all these different things, but I don't like talking about myself that much. And I was like, wow. But y'all made it so comfortable, and it was just a good experience. And I hope that you all continue to do those things to get the information out to the public. And again, it's up to them whether or not they want to find the information.
Voter turnout, what can we do?
Okay, so the one thing that, the hardest thing I think is a lot of people that register to vote, they don't know it. Because you got all these different agencies you can go to, driver's license, medical card, food stamp office, all these different places, government agencies that you can go and register to vote. So a lot of people, they think, well, I've never voted, I'm not registered to vote. Well, you might be. So using the website, the vote.ky.gov, to see if they are, for one, that's the first step in getting someone to the polls. And then telling them your experience. A lot of people, and I still don't understand why, but they're kind of it's not scared's not the right word. Just kind of like, I don't know.
I think they sometimes feel like it's complicated, complex.
And I will say,
I've heard some elderly people,
yes.
in the voting precinct, it's complicated
Yeah.
and confusing sometimes.
It can
I guess,
And I think given that information about, basically you go in, you show your ID, you check in, you get your ballot, go to a booth, fill in the boxes beside their name, and take it to the scanner. But this last ballot, y'all know, it was front and back, and you were like, these questions were just scared me. If I didn't know no better, it was too much. It was just too much. And people were like, it was too much. So I think that giving them your experience, simplifying the process like I just did, would help and maybe encourage them, or just take them with you. Or encourage you to go out and go together. Like with me, myself, my kids, my youngest voted for the first time in this past May. Of course, I wasn't going to just send him by himself. I took him with me, and I gave him an idea of what to expect when he got in there, And I was like, you do you. You better vote for me, your mama, but everything else is on you. You do what you want to do. But just encouraging the young people, prior to this election, it was 2018, I got an opportunity to go to some of the schools and talk to their senior class and then register some of them. But I went on the app and I was like, oh, I see you've already done this. And if they hadn't, I took voter cards with me to help them get registered to vote, and then just explain to them like I did you. Because it starts there too. It starts with our young people and getting them accustomed to voting and what to expect, and explaining the importance to our community, our youth at church, and our own children and their friends. My son had game night. He's a gamer, and I was like, "Are y'all registered to vote?" And they're like, "What does that mean?" And I was like, "Okay, sit down. Here we go." But the conversation's got to start, and it can't. You talk to 3 people, and those 3 people might talk to 3 people, and so on and so on. So it's all about communication, and just like what you all did during this past election, you helped get the communication out there, and it was huge. And we've just got to do that, even if it's smaller places, schools. I know churches. There's a line there, I suppose. But just meet and greets with candidates, or if we could get some of these candidates down here from Frankfurt, they're going to be running, that would be great. That would be huge for the league and for our community. So I noticed the more I pushed it, the less people wanted to hear it. When I approached this, hey, you got any questions? And the conversation tended to start. So some groups are like, you need to do this, and they're like, well, why do I need to do this? Well, explain to them what the importance is.
And that's when the school has a bigger role to play in it, especially your social studies, history, as enrichment, extended learning, and motivating the student, wanting to get involved, and what the process looks like. That everybody has a voice.
Yes, that is correct. And that's encouraging. That's the last couple times, like I said, 18, it was a civics class at County High that I got to go to, and even the Hopkinsville Community College. I went there, but a lot of people weren't even residents of our county. They were from out of, but still, it didn't matter because they were still just as interested, and that was good. So it helped their county out where they went to. But yeah, just making those quick little connections around the county is what's going to be key in promoting our county.
I'm wanted to ask another question. As far as purging, what do we have to do as lead to at least get that, it needs to get started, eliminate or something? Because
The actual process?
well, just getting it purged, period, so that it be more accurate. Go ahead.
Okay, so the reason the purging stopped, and I don't have the information, it was due to a lawsuit in Frankfurt. That's why it stopped. Yeah, they were purging the wrong, and not intentionally. So the only way that right now, our office takes initiative that, I know this kind of makes sound a little more, but it's really not. Information from vital statistics, when someone passes to the State Board of Elections, there's some kind of, I don't even know why, but there's a huge gap there. So once a month, we will send up any information in our local obituaries to try to do what we can. But we can't, the only thing that we can purge ourselves is if someone sends us a letter that they moved out of state and they're no longer residents of Kentucky or Christian County. Then we use that letter in order to delete them out of the system. Other than that, we have no control locally on what we can purge. So basically, if you haven't voted in 2 federal elections, you become inactive.
Sure.
Okay? And then you're inactive what it seems like forever. But so an inactive voter could still show up at the polling place and be able to vote. Once they're in that inactive stage, you're not deleted, you're just kind of in limbo. But we have to have an oath of voter, a voter registration card, all these things, affirmations signed to make sure that they're actually who they are. And most of the time the address is different too. So it is a logistically legal, all the red tape involved. So locally we can't do anything, it's all on the state level. So once this, which I heard it may not be long, but my focus really, in our county, we're the only county that has the problem, I won't say problem, issue with the military remaining registered here and not falling off of the books.
Is that not true at Fort Knox also?
Not as much, because actually, come to find out, Fort Knox is a lot, people tend to stay.
Okay.
It's not so much as a transit, in and out movement. People go up there, if they don't retire, then they settle down. So they become permanent residents.
I think the size of Fort Campbell also.
Fort Campbell, and unfortunately, we also have to take, because we know there's an imaginary line there, and I'd say 75% of all those registered are actually in Tennessee. But it's a federally owned governed property. It's not Kentucky, and it's not Tennessee. But it does have a 42223 zip code. Tennessee can't take them, we have to, if they declare themselves a resident. Which I always try to, if ever get a handle on someone, I'm like, what is your home of record? So if you got out today, where would you go? Well, I'd go back home. Okay, where's home? That's where you need to stay registered to vote. That's where you need to request your absentee ballot every single year. Because there could be actually local people, they're missing out on neighbors, cousins, or mom, anybody they could be voting for on that local ballot. Here, they only get a federal ballot anyway. They don't get to vote for us locally, or because they have their own school systems, they have their own police department, they're their own little thing all together down there.
One thing I noticed, I was retired military, but not here in Fort Campbell, but when I got here and I changed my driver's license to Kentucky, it was like an automatic check box that I was registered. And I remember other states and cities that I went to, being in the military, that wasn't automatic. They'll ask, well, are you in the military? You go, yeah, they go, you might want to register to vote absentee for your state. They always stop you, but here, I know they just,
no, they don't do that here.
yeah, they just click and register to vote. You're like, oh, okay,
Even
thank you.
Okay. Even now with the regional, it's even quicker.
Yeah, that's
They don't even
what I
ask
was
the parliament, because we've had to ask the programmers, hey, why are we getting Hawkins County? Why are we getting Trigg? So we're having to send those to those counties, because it's a regional office now, so everybody, comes here and this address doesn't belong in Christian. So we're having to go through the list, separate those out, send them to the appropriate counties. So hopefully that is going to get better.
I went to Madisonville and I was like, oh, that's it? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll click the button, girl.
Yeah, it's very simple, and again, that goes back to, they don't even know that they're registered. So you got all these people, when you go, oh, you're registered to vote? I'm not registered to vote. And then you come up, if you put their first name, last name, date of birth, they are.
Yeah.
They are registered. And then you can check their address. Is it correct? Yes or no? Okay, then we need to do paperwork. If it is, well, you're good to go. Here's your voting locations, voting centers that you can choose from. So really, it's just conversation. As much of it as we can do at any point in time, and then hopefully that person shares that conversation with someone else. Because that's key in all this. Our turnout, you know, how people find out who's running for office, where's my voting center, what district, magisterial district, we got a lot of that. What rep district? Between 8, 9, and 16 this last time, people didn't know if they were Byrons, if they don't know. And it's not that they have to know, but it's good for them to know. So having those kind of things and communicating that as much as possible is key in having successful elections.
I don't know if you're going to redistrict the magisterial district effective starting this event of April. It's 30 days prior.
Yeah. So I have been involved in 2 county redistrictings. They are lengthy, and I had no idea. I thought, well, you just put a map together, you go over here, and you put the census blocks together. Yeah, it's not all that's to it. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So there's preliminary, before you even start writing the descriptions for each individual precinct within your magisterial district has to have a written description. So someone can take that piece of paper, go out here and walk it. So Vince left at so many this direction to this direction, down this river, across this, and you have to use visible landmarks. So rivers, streets, you can use census blocks, things like that. So it is a big deal, and I'm assuming with the census we'll be changing some of the areas. We're also going to try to work with the city of Hopkinsville. I would love for us to eliminate some of our ward splits within our precincts, to try to work that out so there's not so many ballot styles, ballot faces. I don't know how well that'll go, but I'm still going to make an honest effort to try to eliminate some of those ward splits. By doing that, that eliminates how many ballot styles, ballot faces that we have. And then people knowing, well, if I'm in this precinct, I'm also in this ward. You know, that kind of helps too, but we'll see how that goes.
And they're doing that because of the numbers you got in the black.
Well, it would have happened this last one, but because the, what is it? Your census report.
Yes, it was delayed because of COVID.
Okay.
That's why that didn't affect us, but it will in 2020.
Because the numbers are so far off from each.
You do it every 10 years.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's done after a census. Then, so the first step is your reps. Your state reps do theirs first. And then the magistrates, because magistrate lines cannot cross a state rep line. Oftentimes, we tend to follow quite a few of those state rep lines in our written descriptions for our magisterial districts. So that's why they do theirs first, then we do ours. And then, you know, like I said, we have to go through and use, like we could use the city of Hopkinsville's city limits, or if we wanted to use a different, you know, Oak Grove, we use their city limits. But you got to have evidence of those city limits in order to refer to them. So when you take your written description, you have to make sure that you can follow the map with it. And that's why we have a program in our office. It's called ArtView, and it's great. And David Carroll from the city of Hopkinsville Planning and Zoning plays a huge role in helping us make sure that we have our shape files, that we have all of our point files and everything in order to get this started. Oftentimes, you also want to get a committee together of no party preference people in order to, you usually you get a committee together, you show them, and then that committee says, okay, that looks pretty fair between your magisterial districts, and then you'll call in your magistrates together, or the ones that would directly affect, like one, you know, you've got the ones beside you and below you, you would come in and make sure that everyone's okay with the outline that you've got. And then that's when you really get to work on the written descriptions and making new maps.
Yeah, they talked about that at our last meeting, but I got this information like mid last year, but I'll make sure I keep up with these dates, because I know it's important.
Well, in the training that I'm going to next week, the next 2 days, there's a topic on redistricting. Because some of these clerks that are brand new, like never even worked in the office, whoo, they gonna have a whole, not just elections, everything. I'm just grateful for them. I have a great staff and a foundation that I can focus on redistricting and knowing that the other offices will be in good hands.
So let me ask you, this year for us, well, this term, and our mine is Thursday, we're having an actual Zoom meeting going over the entire duties of the magistrate.
Right.
Do they do that for the county clerks as
Yes.
well? Okay.
That's what I'll be leaving for tomorrow. Is new clerk training, and of course we have one every month.
Awesome.
Not just for new clerks, but the clerks have a meeting once a month.
Okay.
And you're required to go and you have to get so many hours
Okay.
of
So
training,
you
just like you
like
have.
us, okay.
Yes,
Yes.
the same applies for me as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and anytime that any of you all have any questions, Nikki knows she's got my cell phone number. Anybody else that wants it can have it. Just text me. I'll get back with you as quickly as I can. And in whatever aspect, if you have questions or if you know of a place that I need to go talk to, let me know. I'll be happy to put it on my calendar and we'll go talk to them. And like I said, communication's key on how we get things done. So.
You know what, I need to bring it to the league's attention, and you haven't mentioned it yet. As far as the magistrate, this time with our new judge, the other magistrates will not do marriages. I'm the one that they're saying yes to. So the county clerk, and I don't know if you're aware already, Melinda, that they're going to increase the cost.
Increase the cost of which one, I'm sorry.
For the marriage license.
I hadn't heard the rumor, but I figured when they go over it, it's one of the things in the outline of the agenda that would be mentioned.
Yes.
In the next couple of days.
Yes.
And which, of course, a lot of that money is broken down into different agencies as well. It's not just our money, the county clerk's money. There's one for, I believe, some kind of abuse goes into helping for different kinds of things like that. It's not just state and county money. So I don't know what part will be broken down a bit more, but I heard that there would be an increase.
Yes, and now you know it's in my reports, so I can see it. But I want to bring it to the legal attention.
I always thought it was a whole lot cheaper to get married than it was divorced. If they swap that, people might be like, let me give this some thought. Or, Tennessee does that where you get a discount for going to counseling. That's not a bad idea. I'm telling you ladies, when these people come up there, we have an online application process now, which makes it 10 times faster. But prior to that, when they were filling it out, and one of them would say, "What's your mom's name? Oh, what day were you born?" And I'm like, let's take 10 minutes and get to know each other. But counseling like that in Tennessee, they have a discount for them, and I think it's not so much a religious-based counseling. It's, where do you see your future? What are your expectations in the next 5? Things like that. They don't hurt to ask those questions. And bless them, I don't know that they've been asking each other questions. So you're going to see a little bit of that yourself when you're performing ceremonies. You won't see all of it, but
I just know.
it'd be eye-opening.
We have had our discussions.
Yes, oh girl. But yeah, it'll be good though. I know a lot of people have been asking for that service that we've not been able to offer them.
Okay.
So once we do, then you be ready, set, go, because I have a feeling you might be busy. So.
All right, thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.